Hello and welcome to a final walkthrough video of All Saints School in Endicott, New York. This was my elementary school growing up before I went to Vestal in 7th grade. This entrance lobby, I climbed up those stairs so often, coming in late or leaving for doctor's appointments, family vacations, so on and so forth, and it's the gateway into Saintness. So starting from the gym, we're going downstairs and going underneath the gym lobby. First, we'll stop by the physical education offices and supply room. What the? They had putters and golf balls? Lucky. I never got to mini golf. But either way, underneath the gym lobby, there was restrooms and locker rooms because this was the old Seton Catholic High School. Then it became West Middle School, Seton Catholic Middle School, Our Lady of Sorrows Seton Campus, and until yesterday, All Saints. Little stair access on the other side here. Climbing up, it'll take you to the easternmost side of the room. You can access the music room or go through the double doors to the gym. Take a brief look inside the music room. That's actually used to be a library when I was really starting out in elementary school. Stage access door there. And our gym. Right now it's still set up for mass. They were still tearing it down while I was walking through, but a little bit of history here. The altar was the same as when I was there. The processional cross, the blue one next to it, that belonged to Our Lady of Sorrows in Vestal for a while, and it was gifted to OLS Seton because Father Patano didn't like blue. But this was our gymnatorium stage. Mary and Joseph statues were out in the gym lobby. That was to the back. It was a really nice gym. Did very well. A lot of concerts, lots of fun things happen in that gym. So coming out into the lobby, there's a lot of people here, a lot of alumni. We're going to walk up to the first floor. Now, on our right was 3rd grade. I never was here for 3rd grade. This was kindergarten. I was in there for kindergarten. 2nd grade, I did not like my 2nd grade teacher one bit. But that's just my biased opinion. And then 1st grade, this was my 1st grade room, and a lot of the rooms were still open so people can walk through. Whoa, what the? Hello there, critter. Can you save me 15% or more on car insurance? I don't know. Either way, yeah, it's the same rocking chair that Mrs. Page had. This is the current 1st grade room. It became the 1st grade room shortly after I left in 2013. I don't know I can't remember for the life of me what it was before. I think it was kind of a extra instructional room. This is a sensory play area or an area if you need some extra activities. This was never there when I was at All Saints. I always saw this as a supplemental technology room. There was a technology room down here when we still had, I believe, 7th and or 8th grade here. But coming out of here, going across the hallway here, we come into the main office. And the main office, you had the secretary, you had the assistant secretary, teachers' mailboxes. Yeah, this was our intercom system right here. Very old-fashioned. The big green button, you got to communicate with classrooms, or the red button, you did a general PA. This was the principal's office, and it looks so much better than when I was here, so kudos to Mr. Pfeiffer for upkeeping a good office. Another little sitting area / staff space. The nurse beds are there now, but I was in here once or twice if I wasn't feeling well, or if I had to sit down and eat lunch because I was either getting ready to go for an appointment or whatever the case may be. But I did spend a little bit of time in here in my young years because I was a tiny bit of a troublemaker, I will admit. Now this room right here on the end, this was the staff break room. It was a nice, small, did the job. Now walking down here, we have the nurse's office and copier room. I was a frequent flyer to the nurse. I don't know why. I was just paranoid about being sick, and once I worry about being sick, then I try to make myself sick, and it turned into a horror ordeal. I missed quite a bit of school when I was, especially in 1st and 2nd grade, I was ill, quote unquote. This was my early kindergarten room with Mrs. Marin, and it still smells exactly as it did when I was in this room way back from 2005 to 2006. Looking out the window is St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Walking through this room reignited so many memories, and right across the hall was preschool. And for the most part, this remains unchanged. Way back when, we didn't have smart boards or fancy technology like that. We did have play mats and shapes and learning, all the basics, but for the most part, nothing really changed much except for maybe the teachers and definitely the students. The floors always had this weird tinge. There were a few splotches where it looked like it was bleached through or needed a bit of attention. But going up the stairs here to the end, we'll be going upstairs toward the middle school, if you want to call it that. But those that were up on this floor called it the middle school because they were, quote unquote, above the elementary school. This is the current technology room. This is where I had all my technology classes. Once it was just 6th grade being the highest grade here, and across the room was our science room. Lots of classes and labs and activities were done in here. There were quite a few experiments that we did, created, bathrooms across the hall. And walking down this hallway, you get to the library. Now, the library, when it was up here, felt much more like a library. It looked so much better, much more neater, and so much room for kids to spread out, read. If you had to testing accommodations and you couldn't be in your classroom, you could come in here and take tests, any state tests. If you were practicing for your state tests or you were in here and you had accommodations, you'd be in here as well. And we leave the library and walk down the hallway here. And before I get to the chapel, I was in here quite a bit. This was 4th grade, before 4th grade was doing what 5th and 6th was doing. And then once I became a 6th grader, that was math and social studies there. Right in here is the Father Donald Van Amberg Memorial Chapel. It's small, but it did the job. It was fully furnished, full tabernacle, altar, pews, processional cross. The stained glass you see on the side here, that is going to be transferred to Seton Catholic Central in Binghamton, and all the statuary, the stuff that you see in the sacristy, most of it's going to be cleaned out. If it's not going to Seton, it'll probably be going to some of the neighboring parishes. But for the most part, everything's going to Seton Catholic Central. And the memorial sign, Father Donald Van Amberg Memorial Chapel. He was a principal here in the 90s, and he was also the pastor at Our Lady of Sorrows in Vestal. This room was 6th grade's homeroom as well as English language arts room with good old Mr. J, who still doesn't want people to realize that he's Batman. I still laugh about that to this day. I found an old yearbook with that quote. This was always the Spanish room, no questions asked. We had Mrs. Shattuck way back in elementary school, and then Senora Valentine. Looking out to the lot, you could see our playground. It was long since updated several years ago, and that turf area with the Saints logo, that was asphalt when I was here. That was not there, but there was also a area paved for if you wanted to play some Foursquare. Leaving the Spanish room, you get to the 5th grade homeroom. This was 5th grade and religion, and I spent quite a bit of time in here as well. Walking down this hall, there's another 4th grade homeroom here, and unfortunately it's covered up, but 4th grade and until 6th grade, that was math and social studies. Now, for those students who had a IEP or 504 plan and the library was already being used, you could come in here and do some extra help or one-on-one learning with our resource aide. And I will admit I've spent a little bit of extra time in here than I wanted to, but it did the job. Coming in here, we have the art room. The art room still smelled like old paint and a tinge of Crayola wax. Art was fun. The teacher was great. She knew exactly what she was doing. Ref bathroom right there. And believe it or not, this closet right on the end here was where I spent quite a bit of trombone lessons in. When the music room was being used for class, trombone lessons were held up there, and I had a lot of time in there. So walking back down, I'm gonna speed this up a little bit here so we can get back on down to the end here. Now we come to the center stairwell, and when we're walking down, you could see some painted bricks from current students here. But we're gonna be going all the way down to the basement. There were a couple classrooms and the cafeteria. Now, the cafeteria, it was cafeteria, but we also kind of treated it as a multi-purpose space as well. You had morning prayer at the beginning of the day, usually in that little corner or right by where I'm standing right here right now. But lunch was the big staple of the day. That was a time for kids to sit down, connect, and talk about anything other than what's going on in class. But down this hallway down here, it was always rather eerie. The overhead lights weren't on most of the time. I think they wanted to save electricity, but those windows at the end were the only source of natural light, unless one of the other doors here was ajar and it could let in some light. That door that you saw with the lights on, that was a part-time preschool, so if you had a early morning kid or an afternoon kid, you'd go there. Those were for like 2 or 3-year-olds. But anyway, you got your lunch in the indoor, got your food, came out, made sure you were all set on your lunch account. Once you were finished eating, you returned your tray to that door that's ajar there. Now, if you didn't like what was on the menu for that day, you had options. You could either have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, just peanut butter sandwich, a just jelly sandwich, or a salad. A salad was usually Caesar or garden salad based on what was available that day. Coming out here, we have the 2-year-old room, and this room was the music room when I was in elementary school. And we donated an old spinet piano, which was used quite well, and when this school was dedicated as All Saints, the spinet was the piano that was used for the dedication mass with Bishop Cunningham back in 2010. This was the 3-year-old's room, and it was also the before and after school care room. So a lot of playing and a lot of memories were made there. Also did quite a bit of homework. Last look at the athletic center where we started this little walkthrough. Coming back up to the gym lobby, we turn left. This area was where students were waiting for their buses. Little sitting area / office for instrument lessons were also used there, and this was the music room. It made more sense to have this as a music room rather than the library, given its location and its lack of air conditioning and lots of sunlight. It only made sense. But either way, thank you so much for joining me on this little walkthrough of All Saints for the last time. It'll be bittersweet to say goodbye, but great things are going to happen. Just you wait.